Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Top 3, where we're going to be counting down the top 3 black sitcoms of the 1990s. Alright everybody, looking at a Google search and seeing all the shows that came out in the 1990s that were centered on black families was very difficult. But I was able to, knock off those people who had their main run or the main portion of their run in the 1980s. That helped me to eliminate the Cosby Show. Then I went on to look for shows that had a big cultural impact in the black community, but are also kind of transcendent of just the black community and had an effect on the wider audience, the American audience. So that helped me whittle it down just a bit. When I think about my top 3, I want to think about 3 things. 1, rewatchability. That's the most important thing. If this is a show that we can't put on today and watch it and relate to it today and it won't feel dated, then it won't make the list. The seriousness in which they handle certain topics. Now, not every show on my list handled serious topics, but I think it was a requirement that you at least touch on some things that were national issues. And if you didn't, then you had to really overcompensate in another area, which my main show did. And finally, it had to be something that's relatively respected, not just in the black community, but again, as a show on the whole. So let's go ahead and get started with number 3. So number 3 was the most difficult spot to pick because my number 1 and number 2 were very easy, for me at least. But when I look at number 3, I had a toss-up. On one hand, I have Living Single. Now, Living Single is actually the format for the show Friends. If you like Friends, then you probably would have liked Living Single. The actual owner of, I want to say it's the owner or CEO, one of the top people at NBC, actually said that he wanted Living Single from Fox, but couldn't get it, so he copied it. The reason why I didn't put Living Single as my number 3 is that while I love the show and I do have memories of the show, there's not one episode that I can point to and say that was a super fire episode, or oh, I laughed so hard at this, or oh, this is something I really wanted to see. You can't really do that with Living Single. Maybe other people can, bigger fans of the show can. I know I cannot. So I ended up going with something that's widely respected. It handled serious topics in a very real way, and just a mind-blowing way for the times, and that would have to be Family Matters. So on a national scale, I know Family Matters started in 1989, but it had the majority of its run occurred in the 1990s. That's why it's on my list. For a period in American history, Steve Urkel, the character Steve Urkel, was the biggest thing in American pop culture. He had a moment as a character, and you can't deny that. You have to admit that Steve Urkel was the biggest thing in America for a certain period of time. They had a primetime slot. They did, as a show, go on a bit too long, but they had huge character moments. Moments like this.
Say, did you happen to pull over a 77 Dodge Monaco? The driver was a black teenager.
Yeah. Ran a stop sign.
It was failure to signal.
Whatever. Who are you, the activist on the force?
No, I'm a father on the force, and that kid was my son.
I can see you being upset and all, but hey, it was your kid that messed up, so don't try and take it out on me, all right?
No, it's not all right. And do you know why it's not all right, Evans? Because I think that you rousted my son.
No way. He fit the description of a carjacker we've been looking for.
That will not cut it, Evans. Because I am familiar with all of the outstanding carjacking bulletins, and not one suspect even remotely resembles my son.
Come on, give me a break. It's dark, it's a black guy.
Oh, case closed. Lock him up.
You know, bottom line, your kid was in the wrong part of town.
The wrong part of town?
Yeah.
Oh, so what are you saying? That black kids aren't allowed in white neighborhoods?
They wouldn't be there unless they were looking for trouble.
And you better talk to your kid. He gave me a lot of lip. Is that why you made him get out of his car? Is that why you forced him to lie down? Is that why you cuffed him?
Sarge, if your son had just told us he was a cop's kid, it would have been no problem.
So what do you say? That you only harass black kids whose parents aren't cops?
I didn't say that.
You didn't have to say that. Because the point is that you two harassed my son because he's black.
You can't prove that.
So like for that scene to play in the 1990s, like addressing racial profiling, that was huge because that's still an issue in American society today, and they was talking about it way in the early 90s, and it was a much worse problem back then, and it's still horrible now, but at least they were bold enough to take those steps, and American audiences on a whole accepted it and embraced it, and that's one of the better scenes to come out of that show. Now, did they do too much at the end? Yes, they probably went on too long with the Stefan Urkel and the Steve and the switching back and forth, and then they had episodes where Laura was a Urkel and Carl was a Urkel. Like, they did a bit much as a show, and it probably should have ended a few seasons sooner, but you had to respect the name Steve Urkel as far as TV shows went in the 1990s, and that's why it had to be on my list. So, moving on to number 2. So, number 2 for me is real easy. My number 1 and 2 are really and truly interchangeable, but to be definitive, I gotta say The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is my number 2. And here's why. Will Smith was not a star before this show, but after this show, he launched out his movie career, and everybody knows how that went. This show had characters that everyone knows and loves, tons of laughs, memorable episodes, and it's so weird that I was choosing to do this at this time. I'm writing all my topics down on the pad, and a friend of mine on Facebook had posted something that I want to drop in right here.
The first couple times that I'm seeing clips of James, you know.
I'm Philip Banks, and I'm running for Superior Court Judge.
What the hell is that? We've done it.
Billowy mounds of mashed potatoes.
Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. There'll be other scouts.
I love you, Uncle Phil.
I have something special. Just remember, happiness comes from inside.
I'm lucky to have such a wonderful family. Even my pain in the butt nephew.
I love you too, Uncle Phil.
Nobody does anything without help, Will. People open doors for me, and I worked hard to open doors for you. It doesn't make you any less of a man to walk through them. But as long as I'm with you, there is only now.
How come you don't want me, man? James Avery.
So just watching that clip, you can see the memorable moments that this show created. You can see how this show tackled serious moments over and over and over again. And it's crazy that my friend would have posted that because I had just started to cobble my images together and all the things that I was going to use for this episode of Top 3. And when I saw that, I said in the comments, this is everyone's favorite TV uncle. There's characters on other shows, like Carl Winslow was cool, but he wasn't your uncle. He wasn't the one that you look to get this advice. And sometimes he had his moments, but no one had more moments more than James Avery, Uncle Phil. The show didn't launch a whole bunch of careers, but everyone recognizes the faces that played on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, not just Will. And it was a very, very transformative show. Like, you feel like if you watched it at the same time as I did in my life, you feel like you kind of grew up with Will to a certain extent. And that's why Will Smith is so beloved still by millions and millions of people, on top of the fact that he's a really great guy who does some really great movies. So, with Family Matters at 3 and The Fresh Prince at 2, there can only be one. And my number one is Martin. So, I'm going to roll in a clip to start off talking about Martin, because if you're a person who knows Martin as a show, you know how high its rewatchability is. You can put on Martin right now, and as soon as you see this face, you're gonna be laughing.
You know the song. Sing along. You're right. I think you're wrong in the high. I think you're wrong in the high. I think you're wrong in the high. Look at the white shoes. Look at the white shoes. Break it down. It's down. Watch your mouth! You're wrong in the house! I think you're wrong in the house! Watch your mouth! Without a doubt! Put it on top! I think you're wrong in the house! Okay, it's all about you! I think you're wrong in the house! I think you're wrong in the house! In your mouth!
Listen, I watched that clip over and over. When I found this, I said, I'm putting that in the video and I'm gonna let it run, because that thing is fire. There's so many. Martin played so many characters on his show. Martin played his own mama. Martin played Jerome. Martin played Otis. Martin played Roscoe. Martin played Shanae. Martin played, I forget, the Kung Fu instructor. Like, he played a bunch of characters on his show. And all of them have their own little thing, and people remember them all. And not just Martin, but you got Gina, you got Pam, you got Tommy, you got Cole. Like, everybody knows these characters. Bruh Man from the Fifth Floor. Listen, everyone knows Bruh Man from the Fifth Floor. There's words that I could use, but then there's also, like, you just have to understand to a certain extent of how rewatchable and how enjoyable Martin is. Now, the one strike against Martin is that it did not tackle serious topics as often or as well as Fresh Prince or Family Matters, or as a lot of shows, to be quite honest. But no show on this list besides the Fresh Prince has a high level of rewatchability. If somebody else came to me and said, well, I put Martin 2 and Fresh Prince 1, I understand, but those two in a top 3 have to be 1 and 2. But I'll stand by Martin here, man. I have a friend who continuously at this moment, with the plethora of good shows that we have to watch, and me and him have these same discussions, and he still comes home and puts on Martin and then goes about his day doing stuff in his house, and he'll stop and watch and get up and keep going. And because Martin is like the best show to just put on in the background and catch all the funny moments, because there were so many throughout the running of that show. My top 3 have to be Family Matters, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and Martin. If you have a different top 3, please leave it in the comments below. By the way, like this video, subscribe to this channel, share this post if you're seeing it on Facebook, and also I encourage you, start a dialogue, talk around with people. What was your favorite shows from the 1990s that are still rewatchable today? Because while some of them may have been favorites, they may not be highly rewatchable like these 3. Anyway, enjoy yourself, guard your heart, and come back and see me for another episode of Top 3.